Episode 2, She Came Through Fire. The battle for the landing stones did not sound, Eren told his sons, like the songs men later made from it. Songs gave battle rhythm. That night had none. It was steel shrieking against hardened flesh. It was the crash of bodies on sacred stone. It was drums trying to speak through the roar of fracture fire. It was the hiss of river spray turning to steam where red bolts struck the standing wall of Nam Lapi. It was the sound a man made when terror touched him, half a heartbeat before death did. In the Hall of Kings, the fireballs burned low and patient. In Eren's memory, the world was breaking. Young Eren moved across the river terrace with blood already on his sword and sparks bursting from every blow. Around him, the messenger guard fought in tightening circles, their black-blue armor flashing under bursts of white and crimson light. Some held the lower stairs. Some died on them. Some vanished in ruptures of red force before their own screams reached their mouths. The invaders were too fast. That was the first truth of them, not merely quick in the way of a gifted duelist or a trained killer. Their speed was wrong. Angles closed too suddenly. Bodies shifted too violently. Their movements looked less like running than like intent tearing through space. The second truth was worse. They learned. A strike that failed once would not fail again in the same way. A formation they met on one stair would be broken differently on the next. Even the lower ranks hunted with a vicious intelligence that made ordinary battlefield courage feel thin and human. One Luor defender stepped into a killing line to cover his shield brother. The nearest invader blurred, hardened its forearm to black metal, caught the man's descending blade, and drove its other hand through the gap beneath his breastplate. The thing withdrew not only blood, but heat. The warrior fell twitching. Then the invader bent over him. Autumn's jaw tightened. Eren saw it. "Yes," he said, voice flat as iron. "They fed in battle when the opportunity was clean." Aru spoke quietly. "To frighten the others?" Eren's eyes shifted to him. "To grow," he said. "And to frighten us. The enemy learned long before we did that terror is a weapon worth sharpening." Then he returned to the night of blood. The terrace had become a broken ring of fighting around the sacred seal. Red fracture tears kept opening above the river stones. More soldiers of the Dominion crossed in pulses, each wave less wild than the last. The first had come like blades thrown in anger. The next came like a hand reaching for something it knew was there. Not the city, not the people, the seal. The carvings beneath the stones were brighter now, veins of buried blue fire running through the ancient symbols with each surge of pressure. Broken obelisks hummed. The standing wall of Nam Lapi trembled as though some old agreement between river and stone was straining at its limit. Near the shattered pod, the woman from Guoga was still alive. She should not have been. Half her armor was destroyed. Her chest wound bled silver light in pulses instead of streams. One leg dragged uselessly. Her breathing was shallow enough to belong to the dying. Yet she was trying to rise, one hand against the broken stones, eyes fixed not on survival, but on the battle. She was counting something. That was what struck Eren first. Even in agony, she was watching movements, angles, timing, not with panic, with calculation. "She did not arrive as prey," Eren said. "Remember that." A fresh burst of red fire struck the upper stair. Stone exploded outward. 3 Luor guards were thrown into the air. One hit the seal so hard his spine broke on impact. Another vanished into the standing wall of the river with a plume of steam. The third rose on instinct alone, half blind, and died before his second breath. Young Eren cut one invader across the next seam and shouted over the ruin. "Drive them off the inner ring. Shield left. No one breaks formation." A captain of the messenger guard reached him, blood running down one side of his face. "They're not pressing the terraces," the captain shouted. "They're tightening around the center. I can see that." Another invader hit the captain from the side hard enough to snap his body around before his feet left the ground. Eren killed it with a two-handed downswing that split shell at the shoulder seam and sent black fire spraying across the stones. He turned just in time to see a taller figure land between himself and the Guoga woman. It was not like the others. Its armor was denser, more refined. The black shell layered with red-lit channels under the surface. Its mask was narrower. Its movements held none of the feral excess of the lesser ranks. No wasted rage, no beating paws, no theatrical cruelty. This one had come to finish. The first exchange nearly tore Eren's sword from his hands. The enemy struck low, then changed angle, faster than any human wrist should have been able to track. Eren caught the second line of attack by instinct and pain more than sight. The impact shot through his shoulders into his spine. He twisted aside before the third cut could find his ribs, but even the air it displaced felt sharp. It pressed him immediately. Strike, turn, hardening block, claw rake, elbow smash. A sequence built not only to kill but to overload response. Young Eren gave ground once, then understood that yielding space was death. He stepped into the next blow instead, letting it scrape across his pauldron and drove his shoulder into the thing's chest. He might as well have hit a gatepost. The creature did not move, its head tilted slightly. Then the paralysis came. Not from sight this time, from contact. Cold lightning crawled up Eren's sword arm, not numbing it at once, but locking deeper, joint by joint, tendon by tendon, as if some patient hand were closing doors inside his body. The invader saw the failure begin. Its claws opened. The killing thrust came for the throat. Eren let go of the sword with one hand, changed his weight, took the blow on the reinforced ridge of his shoulder instead of his neck, and drove the pommel of his weapon into the side of the thing's head. The shell cracked, a thin line only. Enough. He stepped inside its killing line and rammed the blade under the jaw seam. Hot, black fluid burst across his chest and face. The body convulsed and collapsed. Young Eren staggered, breath ragged, fingers spasming around his grip, and reached the Guoga woman at last. Up close, she looked less like a goddess than a star struck down. Her skin glowed from within, where armor no longer covered it. Fine lines of light moved under the pale gold as though her body still obeyed another sky. The wound in her chest was terrible, yet there was no surrender in her face, only strain, only urgency. She looked at Eren with those ringed eyes and said, "You should leave the stones." He almost laughed. Behind him, men were dying in the names of Lapi and Ru. The enemy had crossed to the sacred river. The seal beneath the terrace was waking. The whole kingdom stood on the edge of breach. "This place is mine to hold," he said. Something in her expression shifted, not surprise, recognition. "You do not understand," she whispered. "They did not come only for the mineral. They came because the line held here once. If they break it now, the path reopens." Eren crouched beside her as another charge of red fire screamed overhead. What line? Her eyes flicked towards the glowing seal beneath the landing stones. "The buried defense," she said. "The old lattice, the human bond." A messenger guard crashed near them, half his side burned away. He coughed blood and still tried to rise. Eren turned to drag him back, but another invader came through a distortion tear and landed hard enough to split stone. The Guoga woman seized Eren's wrist. Her grip was astonishingly strong for someone so close to death. "Listen to me," she said, and there was something beneath her voice now. Something that made the bones in his arms seem to ring. "Your people were not called messengers because they carried words. They were made to carry continuity." In the Hall of Kings, Aru's eyes narrowed. Eren did not explain yet. He let the mystery stand. Back in memory, the terrace split wider into slaughter. A blast from the warcraft smashed the upper stair. The standing river wall shuddered. The wounded woman was nearly torn from the stone by the force of it, and across the terrace, Vorun Kael crossed the river. He did not use one of the crimson fracture steps the lesser soldiers used. He was simply there. One moment on the far side, the next on Luor stone, as if distance had acknowledged a master. Where he stood, even battle changed. Warriors who had been moving froze for the width of a breath, not from full paralysis but from the primitive recoil of being too near something higher in the food chain than courage had prepared them for. His ruined face turned toward the woman from Guoga. "So?" he said, voice carrying through smoke and blood. "The shepherd still breathes. The silver woman pushed herself higher on one arm and looked back at him through pain bright as fever. "With less corruption than you." Eren's voice in the present remained calm. She had no fear of him in her speech, he said, only in what he might succeed in doing. Vorun Kael took one step forward. The terrace seemed to darken around him. His armor was not worn so much as alive, surfaces shifting under black plating like scales beneath skin. Red fissures pulsed along his frame. His hands ended in clawed gauntlets, but it was not the claws that made him terrible. It was his stillness. Lesser killers rushed. Greater killers economized. He wasted nothing. Not motion, not force, not dread. "I crossed worlds to close this wound," he said, "and still your kind repeats its old sickness, restoring what should be ruled, guarding what should be harvested." The woman's lips curved faintly, blood silver at the corner of her mouth. "You have always mistaken hunger for destiny." Vorun's gaze moved to Eren then. For the first time that night, young Eren felt what rank truly meant among them. This was no common raider, no field brute, no fast-moving predator in armor. This was command made flesh. Every instinct in him shouted the truth before thought shaped it. If this one held the stones, the defense would break. "Get her back!" Eren shouted to the surviving guards near him. "Move!" Two men surged forward. Vorun moved once. One guard lost his head so cleanly, his body remained standing for a blink before it understood. The other was seized at the throat and thrown across the seal like broken wood. Young Eren stepped into the space between the invader and the woman from Guoga. Later, the songs would call it courage. In memory, it felt much closer to refusal. "You will not touch her," he said. Vorun regarded him for one unreadable breath. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. "A local commander," he said, "a bright one." His gaze flicked over Eren's armor, blade, wounds, stance, breathing. Strong enough to inconvenience lesser harvests, he took another step, but still human. Then he struck. Atum leaned forward without realizing it. Aru's eyes never left their father's face. Young Eren met the first blow and nearly died. Vorun's weapon was not shaped like any human sword. It was longer, thinner through the core, edged with shifting black growths that altered angle in motion. When it met Eren's blade, the impact traveled through metal, through wrists, through shoulders, into marrow. His knees hit stone for an instant before he forced himself upright again. The second strike was not aimed at flesh, it was aimed at thought. Eren felt it like a hook behind the eyes, a command without words, a certainty shaped into intrusion. "Kneel!" For the width of a blink his vision doubled. The terrace warped, he saw false positions, a dead guard rising, a wall where there was none, open air where stone still held. Illusion. Not broad enough to fool the world, only sharp enough to kill. Ru, he thought, not as prayer, but as need. Light, clarity, hold. He bit through the inside of his cheek, used the pain to anchor himself, and threw his weight sideways instead of following the false line. Vorun's blade passed where his neck had been. The Guoga woman, half broken beside the ruined pod, shouted through blood and effort. "Do not let him set your rhythm." Young Eren heard her. More importantly, he understood. Vorun pressed with force but killed through submission. Every exchange asked not only whether the body could endure, but whether the mind would surrender shape first. That was the deeper horror of them. Domination before consumption, control before slaughter. Eren changed his stance, not court form, not parade discipline. He sank lower, river-weighted on slick stone, one shoulder turned, sword closer to the body, offering less line to seize and less certainty to read. Vorun noticed. His smile disappeared. He came again. Steel, breath, pain, and sparks tore the world into fragments. Eren blocked high, cut low, lost the line, regained it, felt hardening travel through Vorun's arm where the blade struck, changed target, took a claw across his ribs, twisted, slammed an elbow into black shell, drove a short thrust towards the side seam, stopped. Paralysis climbed his forearm like winter through water. His fingers began to die around the hilt. Vorun's offhand rose for the killing blow. Then the Guoga woman screamed, not in fear, in power. Light erupted from her body in a ring so fierce the nearest invaders recoiled. The standing wall of Nam Lapi convulsed. The ancient carvings beneath the landing stones blazed blue-white. For one impossible heartbeat, the whole terrace seemed held between river dark and star fire. Vorun's killing strike faltered. Only a little. Enough. Young Eren tore his half-numb arm backward, pivoted with everything left in him, and cut across Vorun's side at the seam the light had exposed. The blade bit, not deep, but deep enough. For the first time that night, the first blade of the Dominion of Ash bled. Black fire splashed across Lu or stone. The terrace froze. Vorun looked down at the wound as if the fact of it offended creation itself. Then he lifted his head and looked not at Eren, but at the woman from Guoga, and for the first time anger entered his face. In the Hall of Kings, neither prince moved. Even the fireballs seemed to hold their breath. Eren's voice lowered. "That," he said, "was the first moment I understood two truths." He looked from Atum to Aru. "The first was that your mother had not come to our world by accident." His gaze darkened. "And the second was that if she died on those stones, all of us might follow." Outside, Nam Lapi moved under moonlight, dark and ancient. Inside, the sons of Eren sat beneath the witness of Ru and the memory of Lapi, listening to the night before their lives began. "And then," Eren said, "Vorun Kael stopped treating us as insects.